All right, everybody, this is Matt Salmon in for Mike Broomhead on KTAR. And there isn't a more important issue that we face as Arizonans, as Americans, in providing a good quality education to the next generation of leaders of this country. And you know, Einstein once said that the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Our dropout rate is way too high, and we need to adapt to the world that we live in today. And one of the people that really understands that, in fact, I've gotten to know him and become dear friends with him. He's a principal at one of the high schools in the largest unified school district in Arizona, the Mesa School District. His name is Mike Oliver. He's the principal at Mountain View High School. And I couldn't be happier to have developed this friendship because he's changing lives. Tell me about your vision, Mike. Tell me what you're trying to accomplish. And ultimately, I want to talk about the teaming approach. And I also want to talk about the academy approach. And how's that going to change people's lives? How's that going to improve student success?
Matt, thank you. It's a privilege to be here with you. And as a teaser, I think outside of principles of faith, that this message is the most important message in the world today, because every doctor that ushers life into the world, every scientist that creates the next cure for the life-threatening disease, and every engineer that builds some edifice or monument that'll stand for generations of time, at some point they sat knee to knee with a teacher. And school can be better. School is a wondrous place where great things can happen, but it can be so much better. It could be more meaningful, more relevant. And what we're doing at Mountain View High School is we are completely reimagining the Great American Comprehensive High School experience in its totality. And it's a wondrous work. We're seeing evidence in the lives of kids where school becomes a place where they actually want to be. And we're starting with our freshmen. You mentioned our teaming model, but how is it different? Because yes, there's only two ways that I know of to improve any culture, whether it's a radio station, a bank, a grocery store, or in my case, a school. You do the same old thing and you try to do it better and better each year using the same metrics. Or you move beyond that and you strive to do better things, and you think of new ways to alter the lives of kids and make it more meaningful and purposeful. And when kids come to Mountain View and they start their freshman year, we've reimagined the ninth grade experience, and kids are placed on a team. We call them our freshman academic success teams, anywhere from 75 to 90 kids, and a group of teachers, a science teacher, a social studies teacher, an English teacher, sometimes a Spanish teacher, will share a common roster of kids, 75 to 90 kids. And instead of one teacher, one classroom, they'll give them interdisciplinary work, real world, authentic work that has a place in the world. And those subjects spill into each other, because in life, the only people that wake up this morning, like Matt, you didn't wake up and neither did I, and say, at 8 o'clock, I'm going to think like a mathematician. At 9 o'clock, I'm going to read and write.
It all fits together.
Life is interdisciplinary.
Right,
High school is the only place where you decompartmentalize the world.
Right.
And it's not how we learn. It's not how we grow. It's not how we see the world. So we've disrupted that, where teachers will work together and give kids real world work. And here's the key to it. It's agency as learners, where kids are set free. They're set free. They're liberated to think big thoughts, to not just problem solve. We always talk about problem solvers. First, they have to identify problems, work together to create solutions. And the most important part is they plug it in the world where it can make a difference. And when you do that, learning is elevated to life and school has purpose. Matt, how many times as a dad did one of your kids come to you and say, Dad, am I ever going to use this in the real world?
Oh,
and
every one of them did.
Yeah, and you'd look at it and you'd say, son, you got a better chance of getting struck by a meteorite while you're sleeping than doing anything that looks remotely similar to that. And everything kids do, everything they do in a place called school should correlate with the world. Otherwise, what's the point? And so our ninth grade model disrupts that, where kids are doing real world work. The school shrunk from 3,500 kids at Mountain View to 75 or 90, and they work to do real world purposeful work.
The thing that's so impressive to me is that instead of just teaching kids rote memorization, I mean, they can find those facts on their smartphone, is you're teaching kids how to actually analyze and think and solve problems.
Absolutely. And the term soft skills is sometimes used, and it makes me cringe because those skills of critical thinking, collaborating, communicating different ways.
That's how the real world works.
Yeah, and they're anything but soft. So fundamentally profound, powerful, foundational skills that correlate with everything they're going to do in this ever-changing world, because the world is going to change between now and the time the second segment is over, probably 19 times. And there will be new Trump headlines with him and the feud with Elon Musk. But let me give you an example of what it looks like when kids are doing real world work. One of our ninth grade teams, they were doing an inquiry in The Art of War by Sun Tzu.
Oh, yeah.
And they had to identify different conflicts, either conflicts that took place in history or ones that are going on right now. And then they did a capstone project where they became experts working in teams of 4 or 5. And this one group panicked the night before because Israel started bombing Hamas, and their conflict was the war in the Gaza Strip. And so they had to get together that night. They met at school an hour before where they were presenting their capstone projects as experts. And they said they had to redo their PowerPoint presentation because everything changed overnight on a dime because the bombing started again.
I hope they got extra credit.
You know, but
that's brilliant.
But Matt, here's the thing.
That's the way the world works.
When kids are doing work that has a place,
right,
it goes beyond the measure of a grade because it matters to them, and they're not thinking about their grade. They get A pluses, but these are kids where if they were using a traditional textbook, that textbook could have been published 3 weeks ago, and it wouldn't have been current enough for the work that they were doing.
Could have been published 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, you know, when I was in high school, and I'm sure when you were in high school, we had different teachers that really, really inspired us and made us, you know, want to be better. And then we had teachers that, you know, weren't so impressive.
Yeah.
But the great thing about this teaming approach is that not all teachers connect with all these students. And the fact is, when you've got different teachers that are teaching them from the same platform, the likelihood that one of those teachers connect with one of those kids enhances greatly, doesn't it?
Yes, and you're really talking about the system that we've had in place is you're relying on the teacher lottery. You're hoping that your kid, you know, in the 5 classes that they have,
doesn't get the stinker.
Yeah, and that they get somebody that's going to be able to connect with them. And when they do, they remember that teacher for life. Well, at Mountain View, we believe that every single teacher needs to be that teacher. And
that's so great.
And we have been working over the course of 4 years to make sure that they're getting that. I mean, your daughter is coming to Mountain View. Laura Ellingson, who used to be one of our board members, fantastic teacher, and her principal at Hermosa Vista is coming to Mountain View because they want to be part of what we're building. But we are very close to being able to say that no matter who your child gets at Mountain View, that they're going to have a teacher that loves them, that reveres them, that will see, you know, not just their gaps, you know, where they need to increase in understanding and growing, but they'll see those wonderful virtues and dispositions that they can build off of. And
so one last question, and we'll break for the next segment, but one last question real quick. There's a lot of teacher burnout that happens, and it's really difficult, as you know, to recruit and keep good teachers because of the burnout factor. When they're teaching as a team, does it reduce?
Absolutely, Matt. And, you know, we weren't meant to work in isolation. And when you think of the way the world is going in all the different industries, people collaborate. They work together so they see things in different ways. They can distribute their expertise to solve problems. And that's what the teaming model does, not just for kids, but for their teachers, because now a child that goes to Mountain View, they'll have 4 teachers that are looking at that student. And when they plan together, these teachers, they'll come up with different ways to influence them, to inspire them, to help close their gaps, you know, so that they can improve on a daily basis. And they get to distribute their because you think of all the competencies that a teacher has to have in order to meet 125 students. If you have, you know, 5 periods of kids at a high school, it's too much for one teacher to take on. But collectively, when they work in a team, they can share that load and they can leverage each other's strengths. And I know this probably isn't making a lot of sense to your audience right now, but if you come to Mountain View and take a tour, you'll see how it starts with their freshman year when we have this teaming model. But what happens beyond that? Maybe that's the next segment.
That's the next segment. And we're out of time right now, but you know what? I'm just so proud that in my hometown, you've got some innovation that really could change the way we do education in the whole country for the better. And I'm excited about it.
Matt, not only will it change education, but it'll elevate the world, because this is the generation that's going to shape, the future for us. And that's not just cliche.
No, it's a fact. Well, thank you. I hope you stick with us, because more on this innovative approach in the Mesa School District on education. Stay with us. This is Matt Salmon in for Mike Broomhead on KTAR. Good morning. This is Matt Salmon in for Mike Broomhead on this Friday hot day. And with me, I've got the principal at Mountain View High School in the Mesa Public School System, Mike Oliver. And Mike, can you... last segment, you talked about a little bit about the teaming approach and the necessity for shaking things up a little bit and improving the way we retain students and their interest and that kind of thing. Can you talk to us about this really novel academy approach that you guys are going to be implementing?
You bet, Matt. So we were talking about the freshman experience when kids come into high school in the first segment. The second segment is really when you hear school people and educators say we're preparing kids for the real world. I also cringe when I hear that, because breaking news flash here on KTAR on this day, the real world to kids is school. It's very real to them. Just ask them. And
it's their whole life almost.
And to make it where it's more meaningful and relevant, so it becomes real world, not a preparation for future living, but real world to them right now, we developed an academy approach that will focus their learning. For example, beginning next year, we're going to have 5 different academies that a student can choose from. So instead of just having one option for school, now they have 5.
And will every student go into one of the academies pretty much?
Yes. And they can choose from like the Academy of Engineering and Creative Design, the Academy of Leadership and Civic Services, the Academy of Marketing and Management, where they focus on being business leaders and entrepreneurs, the Academy of the Arts, Music, and Production. And when kids, like, for example, I was talking to a student and a parent the other day, and the student asked, what academy did I get placed in? Mm-hmm. And we said, you got placed in your top academy. You're in the Engineering and Creative Design Academy, because he loves computers and he wants to be an engineer. And he said, well, what's that academy experience going to be like? And I said, your learning will be focused through the lens of an engineer. A developing, striving engineer in the making. And so in English class, for example, instead of reading To Kill a Mockingbird every time, when they do an inquiry into the language arts, they might do reading and writing that has a more technical lens that's related to being an engineer. One of their classes, it would be an elective class that's a part of the academy, would be the engineering and production design class, where they would look at different ways of design work, like architectural design, advertising design, 3D printing, all of these different facets of the work of an engineer. And then they'll do real world capstone projects like, get this, tell me if you're a kid and you're listening to this, that this wouldn't appeal to you if you're interested in being an engineer. They would actually make a full functioning, small scale roller coaster where they would 3D print the cars and the tracks. They would have to learn graphic design to print the decals that they would put on the cars. And after they make this, and have to do the work of an electrical engineer, because the roller coasters function, with electrical power, then they would go to work alongside engineers that design these roller coasters that would take them backstage at Six Flags to show them how these things work. And it would be where they're not just learning to be a future engineer, they're doing engineer work now. And that would focus their learning. If you have interest in being a social worker or education or journalism, law, political science, you would be in the Leadership and Civic Services Academy. That probably would have been an academy you would have chosen, Matt,
it would have been.
when you were in high school.
Absolutely, because I ended up getting my master's in public administration, so it definitely would.
But you wouldn't just study political scientist. Here's the key. You would become a political scientist who do what political scientists do. And so these 5 academies give kids a real world focus. It correlates with their interest and pursuits. We help them find their aptitudes, and it provides them with opportunity ladders beyond high school, where they can not only graduate with a greater focus, but they would also be able to stack credentials, like they would get industry certificates or diploma designations. And so it creates opportunity ladders for them beyond high school.
You know, Mike, I could talk to you all day. This is real world stuff that changes hearts and minds and changes the way things go in the future. I'm so proud to know you. I'm so excited about what you're doing for the people at Mountain View High School. And you know what? It's terrific that it's you, and it's terrific that it's in Mesa, and it's terrific that it's my hometown. So thanks for what you're doing.
Right back at you, Matt, and thank you for all your support and advocacy and for putting your fingerprints on this too. It's been an honor, and we've got work yet to do.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.